Okay, so since last time I did a little extra work and I replicated some of the steps from the last video where I encapsulated the ACE editor using some helper functions. And now I've encapsulated the iframe that we use for executing the generated code using some additional helper functions. Well, actually just one helper function is this function setup iframe here. So now what's going to happen is that the PureScript code, once I port this to PureScript, is going to generate the HTML and the script bundle, and then it's going to pass those to setup iframe along with a callback that receives the document body of the iframe. And then this function setup iframe does the sort of owns the iframe reference, creates an iframe, and does the sort of does the necessary work in order to set up the execution of the code inside the iframe and wait for the body to become available. Okay, so now I'd like to do the same thing that I did last time by taking this execute function and moving it over into PureScript. So let's do that. So let's execute. Execute is here. Okay, so let's, well, first of all, let's make a wrapper for setup iframe. So we already have a few of these from last time where we're just re-exporting these window globals into the PureScript code. So let's do that. We need setup iframe, and then we can make that available. Execute is going to be I'll implement that here. The comment can say that we're going to execute the compiled code in a new iframe. Okay, and we'll need a new foreign import for setup iframe. Okay, and that's going to, this is quite a long type, so let's break this up. It's going to be for all f, and f4 with the usual effects. And it's going to take 4 arguments. The first argument is going to be a jQuery reference to the container that will contain the new iframe. The second will be the HTML string, the third will be the JavaScript string, and the fourth will be a callback, and it will return unit. Okay. So the callback will have type f1. Let's make sure I get this right. And it's going to take the body element, which is actually just a regular DOM element, it's not a jQuery element. So maybe what we can do actually is to wrap this in a jQuery constructor here before we pass it off to the JavaScript function, and then this can, let's see, this can be a type jQuery here. Okay. And the comment can say that we will set up a fresh iframe in the specified container and use it to execute the provided JavaScript code. Okay, we currently need to bring that into scope. Here's our JavaScript that we need to port. So we can start. So we can say that we can create the HTML, and that's going to basically be the same as this code here, except we're going to use join with instead of join down here. Okay. Also, obviously, we need to use double quotes. And we also need to bring this backend record into scope, which we can do here. Oops. Backend config of backend. Okay. Slight problem, we need to get rid of these quotes here by escaping them. Let's see if I can get all of them. Go. almost correct. Those two missing. Alright, let's try and save that. Now we get this additional information that HTML is a string, okay, which is what we expected. Let's see what's next. So we took care of this piece. Okay, so now we need to create this thing called replaced, which maybe we can do with a better name. Okay, so that's going to be JS. So maybe I have a function run JS. Do I? No. What is JS defined? Is it a new type? Get JS. Okay. So we call get JS on JS, and then we need to replace a few things. So let's see, we can use replace from regex, and we're going to need the function version, so that's replace prime, and we'll bring it into scope, qualified. Well, actually we're already bringing it into scope like that, so that's fine, let's just use it later. So we're going to provide a string, and we're going to provide a callback. Oh, apparently I got the type wrong, so replace prime has type replace prime has type a regex, and then a function, and then a string. Okay, so replace prime. So my regex is going to be this one right here. So I can create that using regex and provide a string. And just to keep this simple, I'm going to use one of these triply quoted string literals, which lets me use different sorts of unescaped characters inside. Because I don't want to have to think about how to escape this right now. And then I need to provide a flags object, which I think I can just use global. And then here I need a function, so let's use a type hole. This seems to be, oh, I can use unsafe regex instead of regex here. Okay. Alright, so f has type string to array of string, which I assume represents the captures, but I just need the first one. So let's call that s. And we're going to construct this string as the return value. So it's ps indexing. Okay, so we need to, let's think what this is doing. This is dropping the require and the quotes off the front. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 characters off the front. And taking 2 characters off the end. So maybe we can do this in terms of drop and take, which might be a little nicer. So we can say, did I bring this into, okay, yeah, so I brought this into scope as string. So I can say string dot drop, I think it's a 9, things from s. And then I need to also take some number of things, and the number of things I want is the length of s minus 2. Okay. Alright, so now replaced is, oh well, it didn't quite make the cut here, never mind. Let's carry on anyway. So next is wrapped. So wrapped is another case where we're using join with. So let's just copy this code. Okay, we go through the same steps here. Replace with double ticks. And this looks good, so now we have wrapped. And then we can construct the full set of scripts. And scripts is going to be the concatenation bundle and wrapped. Okay, so string with JS doesn't seem too happy. That's trying to check that expression has type. It's taking JS as this argument, which is bundle and bundle is used here, so we need to call getJS here. Okay, now to do is should just be a simple case of calling setup iframe, and we need to use run fun4, and we provide 4 arguments. So, well, first of all, we need to select column 2. Okay. We need to provide 4 arguments. So this is going to be argument 1 is the container itself. The second argument is HTML. The third argument is our script bundle, and the fourth argument is a callback, which I'm going to write in a second. Okay, so here's the type of the callback. It's going to correspond to this function right here. So, remembering that body now is a jQuery object, so we can say that we need to make an fun1, and we're going to take the body. And I seem to remember writing a few click handlers. Let's find the one that hides the menus. Here it is. Let's just reuse this. So on click, I seem to remember on taking an additional argument. What's the type of on? On takes a string. jQuery is the last element. There we go. Okay, looks like we're done. Hopefully this all works. Let's see. So let's make a bundle. And if this works, we'll only actually have one function left to implement, which is the one that actually calls the web service. So that's great. Let's try it. Obviously something's gone wrong. Okay, let's debug. Cannot read property render of undefined. That seems to be happening in here in the executed code, which is always a bit of a pain to debug, unfortunately. So it's saying that try PureScript is, my guess would be that something is not getting replaced correctly, and it would look like, it would appear that try PureScript should be PS try PureScript perhaps, maybe that's the issue. Let's step through. Let's look for replace. Actually, let's just hard refresh. Okay, so that's not the issue. Let's look for replace prime. Okay, here it is. And let's step into the callback function. Okay, so the S that we're matching here is, oh, I see why it was 12 then. It was 12 because we had to take account of the double dot slash, which is why it was 12 and not 9. Okay, so we can fix that like that. Let's make a new bundle. Refresh. Now, hopefully if I evaluate this string, I get what I want, which looks correct. This is great. Let's see if that solves the problem. Okay, it does. That's great. Let's try a few things. Here's a gist. Let's try Thermite. That has a slightly different way of executing things. It pulls in some require modules and some CommonJS modules and stubs them out, but that seems to be working fine, so that's good. All right, this looks positive, so let's commit this. I'll say that I'm implementing execute. I'll push that. So this isn't too bad. It's quite nice. Now obviously we're taking advantage of types here. You know, the usual things apply. We could certainly be doing We could certainly do some more refactoring to sort of tidy this up. It's not exactly idiomatic PureScript, but it's not terrible either. We're certainly benefiting from some types. Actually, one thing I would like to try is that, yes, okay, good. So the callback to hide the menus does seem to be working when I click on the body of the iframe. That's good. Okay, so there's only one method left, and that's compile. So let's have a see how we might be able to tidy that up and get that into PureScript. So a few things sort of stand out. First of all, we have an AJAX call here. We probably want to wrap that up as an API call in the same way that we did with the gist creation method before. So we can do that. We'll have a success continuation and failure continuation. We need to find some way to encapsulate the response we're going to get from the service. We could use something like foreign, or we could use our own abstract data type. So let's see. The response seems to possibly have an error object, and if it has an error object, it will contain a tag, and the tag can be either compiler errors or other error, and we'll respond to those things differently. And if it doesn't have an error object, it will have a JS object, a JS property, I should say, and then we will respond differently depending on how show.js, whether the show.js checkbox is checked. We'll either call the default bundle and execute, call the bundle and execute function for the backend that we're using, or we'll just show the JS in the output. So this looks like it should be certainly possible to implement. But let's just start by pulling out, just refactoring to pull out this this code right here. So we'll say we'll create a function called compile. Let's say well, we're calling the compilation API using a HTTP post. So we could call it something like post code. That's not a terrible name. Let's call it compile API. We can always rename this later. Okay, so it's going to take a few things. Let's start here. So we're going to need the backend. You know, I may as well just provide the backend as an argument. We're going to need the code itself. We're going to need a success continuation, and down here somewhere we're going to need a failure continuation as well. So here it is, error. Let's just copy this. Oops. Okay. So, whoops, there's an extra curly brace missing there. Okay, so this looks relatively complete, but let's see if we can figure out what we're going to pass to our continuations. We have two, there's going to be done and fail, just like we've had for everything else so far. And then, let's see, we need to look for res. Actually has the type of this. Well, the error continuation is the easier one. So let's just pass res.response text here. We'll call fail of res.response text. And here we're going to call done probably of res, but let's make sure that makes sense. So res is just going to be our, well, res is only going to get called on success. So in this case, we're going to definitely have some, like a jQuery object. We might want to use foreign to try and parse this. This seems fine, so we'll just pass along res. That's okay. So here we can use our new function. We'll just call exports.compile API. We need backend, we need the code, and we need two continuations. So we'll take the first one, we'll take res. It's going to clean up the markers. And that's the end of the function. and the second one is going to take the error now. It's going to append it on to the console in the DOM, and that seems to be everything. So now this is sort of in a nice shape so that we can port it into PureScript, but let's just make sure it works before we do that. Compile API says is unused. Well, let's just bring that over now. So we had, this is an f-fun4. It's going to take a backend config, 2 callbacks. So the first one is going to be, well, the second one is going to be a string. The first one, I guess we can just use foreign to represent that. Not much type to type. What have I done wrong? 1, 2, 3. Oh, right, because I need to provide a string for the code as well. Okay, so let's have a comment. We say post the specified code to the PureScript API. Response. Let's try this out. Okay, so that seems to work just fine. This seems to work as well. So let's see, no errors in the console. Looks good. So let's commit this. And we'll just say refactor the code for the compile API. Okay, so now the last step is to just rewrite the compile function. So let's do that. Okay, so this is going to compile the current code and execute it. So here's the JavaScript code. And let's just work through this. So we need an f-fun1, and that's going to bring the backend, and I'm assuming we're going to need to bring in the record as well. And then let's see what we need to do. First thing we need to do is select column 2 and empty it. Empty is apparently not provided by jQuery, so we have to bring that in as well. Let's find some of the other things we've got in for jQuery. Filter, for example, and click. Let's write one for empty. And the comment will say that we're going to remove all elements from the specified container elements. Okay. PSCID. Okay, so the implementation will just look like this. Okay. So we're going to empty the container, and then we're going to append. Let's see, so JQ do, so empty JQ, and then we're going to append, and that's in control mode F jQuery, something to JQ. Well, let me make sure I get this the right way around. Well, we'll find out soon enough. We're going to append this code right here. So create a div, and do a few things with the div. We're going to have to, well, first of all, we're going to append the div here. Let's say I need to add class loading to the div, and I'm going to append text. Whoops. What does this have? Append text takes the string first, and it says that we're loading, and that's going to get appended to the div. And I'm actually betting based on that the div goes first. Let's see. Yes, let's bring this into scope qualified. Where is append? Control monad F jQuery. That's append. Okay, so let's make a bundle. And now I hope to see loading when I refresh. Okay, that's promising. Now let's implement the rest. Okay, so we need to select the code area in order to get the code. Say get value maybe, and I'll fold that down so that we get an empty string if we get a null for some reason. Okay, so now I can run the compile API. So we'll say that we need to run F14. The first thing we need to provide is the backend, so that's BC. The next thing is the code, that's code. And then we need two callbacks, so we need, actually you know what, I'm going to wrap this up in const like I've been doing for the other things. Okay, so instead of run F4, now we're going to say run const run except t, compile const, backend config code is going to be our continuation computation, and then our callback is going to be our final argument, and it's going to have type either string to foreign to F. We can use a case statement to case on that. If we get an error, then that will correspond to this code here. So let's move that up here. And if we get the right of a response, then we'll do what's in this branch. That corresponds to that code. Okay, so now we need to implement all of this. So in the left case, we're going to select column 2. We're going to empty it. And we're going to append, like we did before, or we're going to create, let's just copy this for now. We're going to create a pre-element. We're going to create a code element. This is obviously a little more verbose than it would have been in jQuery directly, but you know, hopefully we'll tidy this up eventually. find a nicer way to do it, pre-encode get created, we append, we'll do jQuery append, we'll append the code to the pre element, and we'll append the text of the error to the code element, and then finally we'll append the pre element to JQ. Okay. And now I'm actually just going to say pure unit here. Hopefully this builds. Code was shadowed right here. Okay, so just use an underscore for now. Okay, just want to see if the error case works. Okay, doesn't seem to be. Let's see if anything went wrong. So I'll refresh. So we were selecting column 2. Here it is. Let's see if we're hitting that case first of all. Oh, maybe this was the problem. Here we go. P2 is a write for some reason. Why are we hitting the right case? Obviously something's gone wrong. Am I passing continuations in the wrong way? Done was the left continuation. Well, done was the first continuation. And the first continuation is creating a right. That's correct. And the second one is creating a left. So we should be getting right in the case of success. Let's just double check compile API. Compile API is calling the first continuation in case of success. Okay. So why are we hitting this case? Let's walk back through the call stack. Yes, I'm calling the success continuation here, even though I have an error object for some reason. Oh, I remember now. That's right. Of course. So the try PureScript API. We're actually doing the right thing here. The try PureScript API, in fact, returns success even when there's compiler errors, and the reason is because some browsers have problems with cross-site requests if you have errors returned from the API. So that's this case. Actually, that will fall into the right case. We're going to have to deal with these here. So let's find a way to parse the results of the compile API using foreign. Let's see how we can do this. Let's create a data type first. It could be called compile result, and it's either going to be compile success or compile failed. Compile success is going to contain some JavaScript. It's a string. Compile failed is going to contain compiler error or compile error. And there's going to be two types of compile error. It's going to be other error and compiler errors. Okay, so compiler errors is going to let's see. Here, res error content seems to be a string, so we can store that string in the other error constructor. And here, res error contents seems to be a list, and the error has a message property and also is there anything else in here? Oh, and a position. Okay. So in this case, we're going to have an array of records, each record is going to have a string and it's going to have a position. And we'll call this error position. An error position is going to be a record. It's going to have 4 properties: start line, which is an integer, end line, which is an integer, start column, which is an integer, end column, which is an integer. Okay. Let's add some comments. This is the position associated with an error. This is the range of text. This is error reported from the compile API. This is the result of calling the compile API. Okay, so now we're going to, well, let's try to compile this first of all. These data types look okay. Okay, so now we need a function that's going to take a foreign object and it's going to use the f monad to create a compile result. And we'll call it parse compile result. And the comment will say that this will parse the result from the compile API and verify it is in the correct form. F is not in scope, that's in data.foreign, bring that into scope now. Okay, so we can basically just replicate the code in here. We can try to look for the error property, and if it's there, we'll do one thing, and if it's not there, we'll do another thing. Okay, so this is going to be actually this could be a lot easier, couldn't it? Compile success. If we actually make this into a record, this one into a record like this, then we can actually just use alternation here. So we can say this is compile success applied to, so we need something that can parse something in this form. Well, let's wrap this up in a new type, and then maybe we can actually just derive this stuff. So this is going to be a success result. And data success result is a success result that contains this. Actually, we can use a new type here. If we're deriving all this, we may as well do it like this. And then this can be a failed result. Okay, so here we can try parsing a success result, and here we can alternately try parsing a failed result. This needs to be brought into scope. It's in Control-Alt. Okay, there's no suggestions here, but I'm hoping that if I install PureScript foreign generics, that there will be generic. Okay, let's build everything first. Okay, well, still no suggestions, but that's okay. Well, maybe I need to provide F here. We can try that. Let's go back into PSCID. Still no result, but that's okay. Let's try derive. Oh well, we need to first derive generic. That's a really good idea. So derive instance generic error position. Let's do all of these at once. So we need one for this, one for this. Okay. Derive instance generic. Which has type generic. We leave an underscore. Generic is not in scope. We can bring it in like this. Okay. Still no suggestions, which is slightly odd. Let's see. So maybe we can use generic decode. Generic decode. Okay. So this. Oh, because we need to provide the options. That's why. Maybe if I leave a hole for the options, it will figure out what to do. Whoops. Okay. Now we have a lot of suggestions. Okay, I'm pretty sure that what I want here is decode generic. Or was it called generic decode? Generic decode, I'm sorry. And now options, okay, so we need a decode instance for compile error. Okay, we're sort of making progress. Okay, so we can derive some of these here. So let's derive an instance for decode. Again, we can do all these at the same time. So we want to decode for each of these. Well, let's see what we need to implement those. So we decode into scope. We need to implement the decode function. And we can just use generic decode, but we have to provide some options. So I'm pretty sure it's called default options, yes. And I want to override the unwrap single constructors flag to set that to true. Compile error says that it doesn't have an instance. Well, that's fine. We can write one. Let's correct this. Okay. So ops is a hole here. Okay, so let's actually bring this out into an argument. We can call this decoding options. Let's type options. Okay, so we can replace all of the various instances here, and then here. Okay. Decoding options. Multiple. Oh, that should be a type declaration. Okay. And then finally, actually, we can turn this into a decode instance as well. So this is going to be instance decode compile results. Where? Okay, so now we need to implement this instance. So the rule was basically that we were going to use a tag, right? So let's see. We look at the tag and then we look at contents. So actually, this corresponds to the way in which foreign generic does decoding. So we can actually just use generic decode again, but we need to override one of the options here. I think the one is called sum encoding. generic compile error, right? Of course, we need to derive generic as well for compile error. Okay, so message. Oh, I see. So let's add another type for this. The compiler. There is a known bug in the compiler where nested records like this don't seem to work when deriving. So we can say with a new type called compiler error. Compiler error. Oops. It's going to be this record. And then, we'll just derive everything as usual. Okay. So now we need a sum encoding. I might have to look this one up. Oops. Apparently Argonaut uses the same name. So a sum encoding, we can use tagged objects, and we just have to provide the field name and the contents field name and the constructor tag transform. Let's space this out a little. So tag field name is going to be tag. Contents field name is going to be contents. And constructor tag transform is going to be the identity. Okay, bring a tagged object in. Okay, decode compile error. Where's compile error? It says that it can't match a record with function. I think that's just because we need to parenthesize this. Maybe not. So decoding options is an options. Default options. Okay. This is my. Oh, that's why. This is update notation. I need colons, not equal symbols. Okay, it looks like that actually worked. So what we can do is, maybe this won't work initially, but we can certainly try and see. So let's start by saying we can let past result, or let's call it compile result, which is going to be an F compile result, and that's just going to be the result of decoding res. Seems to not be happy with the F. Oh, we can use an underscore since this is just debugging code anyway. Okay, hopefully dead code elimination doesn't get rid of this. And we can have a look at it in the console. Okay, so let's go back here. Let's do a hard refresh. And now let's look for compile result equals. There it is. So let's put a breakpoint here and continue. Okay, so here's compile result. We got compile failed, and inside we have compiler errors. One error is an object, has a message unable to pass module. This is what we expected, in position, and the position is correct. So that's great. Actually, that worked out really well. So let's carry on, and then let's put back the changes, and then compile result. Actually, still compile failed. Did I change something else? Maybe I can revert the code. It's saying that it can't pass the module, and it can't pass at start line is 9. Did I change something on line 9? No, it looks correct. Well, let's get rid of the session. Maybe I had additional changes. now the result is, oh, it's success. Okay, maybe I did have changes. And now we have some JS, so this is fantastic. So actually it looked like foreign generic worked out perfectly. So now we can actually just use pattern matching. Now we have an actual ADT. So we can case on decoding the result. Well, let's see what type it has first of all. I know for a fact that we're going to have to run except. So that's what the F monad desugar's into. And here we'll see what type X has. Okay, so something wrong with decode. So we'll need, like we had before, we'll have compile result in here. Okay, now in here, there's an A. A has type either a non-empty list of errors or a compile result. Well, if we have a left, then we can deal with the error case. If we have a right, we can case split further. So we have two possibilities. We have compile success, and inside we'll have a success result. And the success result has a JS string. Or we could have right with a compile failed rather. And compile failed contains a failed result, and a failed result contains an error. So now we have to fill in these three things. Okay, well first of all we notice that cleanup markers happens first. So we do that before we try to even parse the errors. So we can just say cleanup markers. So we have three cases here. This is the JS case. So that goes here. This is the error case. So let's put this in here. And of course we don't actually have code for the other case right now because we were never verifying the result from the server. So this is something entirely new. And we'll have to figure out what to do there. So something isn't quite right about the layout here. I'm not sure what. Expecting indentation in column 1. Let's see. Oh, that's why. These should be arrows and not equals. Obviously that's not a very good error message. Okay, so let's move this case last. Okay, if so, the first thing we need to do is look for the show.js flag. So we'll use do notation here. We'll look for show.js. We'll get that by saying that we're going to select show.js and then asking whether it is checked. We need to use run f fun2 pass JQ here. Okay, and now show.js, we have too many things in scope, but this is going to be a boolean. So we can say if show.js, then else. Okay, so now we're going to run backend.bundle and execute. Presumably we're going to run fun2, and we're going to pass JS and backend config. This is a to do. This needs to be JS. wrap that up. Okay, so there's some problem here with the effects again, so let's add the usual selection of effects, the console. Now we have a bunch more to do, so if we're showing JS, then we need to run this code. So let's copy some of the code from up here. We can select column 2, we'll get a reference to column 2, oops, get a reference to column 2. We empty it, and then we append, we'll create a pre-element, code element, append the code to the pre, append the pre to column 2, and we're going to set res.js to the text. Obviously this is something that we're going to pull out eventually into a helper function. This should just be JS. Okay, so now we can deal with this case. But actually, let's just take a break and we can see if things work so far. Let's make a bundle. Okay, so that seems to work perfectly. Try a couple of different things. Let's try the firmware backend. Okay, this looks great. So now we obviously need to deal with the error cases. So let's go back to what we had, 2 typos. Okay, so now let's fire a PSCID again. Okay, so Z has type F, and error is going to be whatever is contained in failed result, which is a compile error, which we can case on. So compile error is either compile errors or other errors. Okay, so we can deal with each of these cases in turn. So we can say that we want to case on error. If it's compiler errors, we'll do something. If there's an other error, we'll do something else. Okay, so in the other error case, this is actually quite easy. Other error just contains a string. Oh, but this is wrong, I notice. Oh no, the contents was a string, wasn't it? So this is fine. Okay, so actually, it seems like now is the time to pull this out into a function, a helper function. So let's refactor this. We can say display plain text JS and display plain text of error. And here we'll just bring this into display plain text of S in a let binding. Now here Y can be displayed plain text of error. And then actually this gives us a good way to fill in this case. So we can display plain text of something of error. Okay, so we need well, we'll come to this later, I suppose. We need a way to turn a foreign error into a text to display. So in the compiler errors case, we're left with this code. This is what we need to deal with in the compiler errors case. Okay, so we get the errors that corresponds to this reference, and we need to empty column 2. So let's do that first. Select it and empty it. Okay. Now for every error in errors, we're going to run this code. So So that seems like a good job for 4. Okay, we'll loop over errors, and we'll bring into scope 1 error, and then we have something to do. Okay, that leaves us with this. Okay, so we need to select column 2. Get a reference to it and append 2 things to it. Okay, so first we're going to create a h1 element. Let's get a h1 by creating h1. I'm going to add class error banner to h1. I'm going to append text error with show I plus 1. I needs to be determined here. Of error's length. Okay, so we can say of show length of errors. Here we can use array.length. And all of that gets appended to h1. I is not in scope. We can fix that. Oops. Okay, so I think we can use something like traverse with index. Is there such a thing as for with index? Oh, there is. Fantastic. So here we can just bring I into scope like this. Now we need to create a pre-element. So we'll create a pre. And we'll create a code element. We'll append the code to the pre-element. Append text. Well, we need a message, the error. Remember that error is going to be a compile. Oops, wrong place. Error is going to be a compiled error, and it's going to contain a message and also a position. Okay, so we're going to append the text message to the code element. So we have h1 and pre, and finally we can append h1 to JQ and append the pre-element to JQ. Unknown data constructs compile error, which can be easily fixed. Oh, wrong one. Compiler error, perhaps. Perhaps I need to wrap this in parentheses. Okay. This is saying that JQ does not have the right type. Of course, I need to use jQuery.append here too. Okay, so that takes care of this. And then finally we need to call add error marker. So that's something that we do for every error. Okay, so we already have this in scope. It's an f_fun_4 and it takes 4 integers. And we can just essentially copy this code right here. So position is already in scope. We can call it with position.startLine, position.startColumn, position.endLine, and position.endColumn. And it's saying that position, okay, so position, we need to bring into scope this constructor, and actually we'll just shorten it to pause. Okay, so we need something that turns a non-empty list of foreign errors into a string. Well, actually, you know what we can do here. We don't need to display this text. We can just say unable to parse the response from the server. But in the console, we can render a string, and the way we can do that is to traverse the list of errors. And I'm going to write them out to the console, and I need some function to render them. Hopefully this will suggest one. Render for an error. That seems exactly like what I want. Okay, let's bring that into scope. Okay, so this is a perfectly type-safe version of the JavaScript code. It's so we don't need to have this type annotation anymore. It's doing exactly what it was before, hopefully. I'll test it to make sure of that, but it's now way more type safe because we're actually verifying the result from the server, getting it into a typed form, and then and pattern matching on the result in order to implement the logic. So let's see. Hopefully we should get error markers and error messages showing. Let's do a hard refresh to be sure. Let's try parse error. Okay, that seems to work nicely. We got an error marker. That's great. That should go away when we. Yes, good. Let's try type error. That looks good too. Okay. I wonder if there's some way we can get multiple errors. No, okay. That's something to test later maybe. Okay, so this looks good. We're going to commit this. In fact, there's nothing left of the original JavaScript code except for functions that we extracted out. So we're in a really nice state here. Let me just commit this. So next time, there's a few things I'd like to do. One of the things I'd like to do is to break things up into multiple modules. We have a whole bunch of different stuff here that could be broken into some relatively separate modules. Things like the parsing code that we just wrote, things like the API for gists, the API for the compile, the try PureScript API. I'd like to also look at reducing the use of fun everywhere and just use regular f, especially in the PureScript code that was ported from the JavaScript code. There really is no need to use that. And I'd also like to start thinking about how we can start encapsulating some of the use of jQuery. So obviously everything right now is very, very imperative. And I'd like to avoid that if we can. I'd like to see if we can come up with some lightweight component abstraction that can be used to make that a little more understandable. Or maybe just refactor things into more of a sort of MVC approach. But we'll look at that next time. So thanks very much for watching. Let me know if you have any questions.